Hi there, I'm Jeff Lockhart with QuickStart Academy. I'm here today to talk to you about the OSI model. The OSI model stands for the Open Systems Interconnect. It was a model designed for a networking standard so that everybody would understand the distinct steps in networking. It was created by the International Standards Organization in 1977. The OSI model is broken up into 7 distinct steps. We start at layer 7, work our way down to layer 1. Layer 7 is the application layer. Layer 6 is the presentation layer. Layer 5 is the session. 4 is transport. 3 is networking. 2 is data link. And layer 1 of the OSI model is the physical layer. I'd like to now go through the function of each layer and describe a little bit of how we use each layer. Maybe something a little bit interesting about each layer. So, application layer, which is layer 7, provides the services and utilities so that applications can utilize a network. The way that we typically interact with layer 7 is through our browser. Our browser takes advantage of protocols such as HTTP and HTTPS. And believe it or not, we can also use FTP using our browser. Other protocols that we interact with using email programs would be things like SMTP, which is the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, POP, Post Office Protocol, or IMAP, which is the Internet Message Access Protocol. I had to think about that for just a second. So those are some of the protocols that we interact with at layer 7. Some other protocols that you may not be aware of would be DNS, DHCP, SSH, and Simple Network Management Protocol. There's even the Network Time Protocol that your computer may be using at work to tell what time it is. So those are all layer 7 protocols. Once layer 7 is complete, it hands off to layer 6. Layer 6 is the presentation layer. The presentation layer is made up of 3 distinct functions. We have compression, encoding, and encrypting. Now, all 3 of those are negotiated between your browser and a web server. So these are optional functions. I don't want you to leave this little webinar thinking that every single time at layer 6 there's encryption. Because if you're using an unencrypted web page, then nothing is happening at layer 6 here. So layer 6, the presentation layer, has these 3 functions. Now, when the presentation layer is finished, it hands off to the session layer. The session layer is a supervisor layer. Its primary function is to establish communications, maintain those communications, reestablish communications if for some reason communications get broken, and then to terminate the session once everything is done, once the communications are complete. So the session layer creates a socket, and the socket is made up of 3 parts. They are the protocol that we're going to be handing off to at layer 4. It is also the IP address that we're trying to get to, and also the dynamically allocated port number that's going to be acting as our source port. So these 3 objects are handed off to the next layer, which is the transport layer. The transport layer is made up of 2 distinct protocols, TCP and UDP. TCP is a transmission control protocol. It has acknowledgments. It breaks messages into segments, and it also is what gives us guaranteed delivery. On the UDP side, which is the user datagram protocol, UDP is connectionless, does not require acknowledgments, a little bit more efficient. UDP is probably what is used most often when you're streaming something. So we have TCP and UDP making up the transport layer, which is giving us reliable delivery of data. Once the transport layer is done, it hands off to the network layer. The network layer, its primary function is to find the best route. So that kind of gives you a clue as to what device is being used at layer 3, which is our router. Layer 3 is also responsible for logical addressing. Now, logical addressing sounds weird, but you may have heard of an IP address. And so an IP address is what we're using to go through routers at layer 3. When layer 3 is done, it's hands off to layer 2. Layer 2 is the data link layer. Data link is made up of 2 sublayers, the MAC sublayer and the LLC sublayer. MAC gives us our physical address, and that is a MAC address that's burned into your network adapter. And then the LLC gives us our link layer control, which is going to put a frame check sequence as a footer to our information. And then finally, when the data link layer is handed off, it gives it to the physical layer, and the physical layer is breaking our information up into binary bits. So those are the ones and zeros that cross the internet to the destination computer. Once we reach the destination computer, we actually reverse the process and we go back from layer 1 all the way back up to layer 7. So I hope you've enjoyed this short little explanation about the OSI model. To learn more, make sure to tune in to one of our networking fundamental classes at QuickStart.